Hello and welcome to the Anyone Can Play Guitar podcast,
which gives you, the listener, a series of hints and pointers on your journey as a musical artist.
providing you with interviews from those in the music industry, along with our own experiences.
Ben and James shine some light on the many pitfalls and opportunities that being a musician has to offer.
Last week we finished the second of a two-part episode with Ross Millard from the Futureheads, where we covered set lists, external perspectives, record labels, and being allowed to fail. This week we head over to Beverly Hills to speak to Sari Delmar of Concord Music Group. Here we cover how to promote your music, publicists, having a story and vision, and being unique.
Hello and welcome to episode 5 with me, Ben, and him, James.
Pizzazz,
that's what that was.
Right. Well, it was a bit better than the other time where you looked like you were confused at who I was.
Yes.
I think it was mainly...
What's your point?
I don't know.
Okay. Who we got on this episode then, James?
We have Sari Delmar of Concord Music Group.
And where does she live?
She lives in Beverly Hills, Ben.
I know. California.
Yep, this is
international.
The other side of the pond. So to go with our international audience, we now have our first guest who resides outside of these fair shores of the United Kingdom.
Yep. And this is also the first episode where we've already spoke to Paul and Ross, who are both in bands.
Yeah.
Mark, who is, again, he's kind of like...
predominantly a radio DJ, but also...
Yeah, but he's also like in the forefront, whereas Sari is... she does a lot of work with artists.
Yeah, but a different part of the industry.
A different part of the industry, that's exactly what I was trying to say, yeah. And this was a really interesting one. A lot of things sprung to mind that we did do. Some well, some not so well.
Yeah.
And some things sprung to mind which I thought, I don't even know why we didn't even contemplate doing that. That was like...
hindsight, Benjamin.
Exactly. But that's the whole point of this podcast, because someone could be listening and going, I didn't think about doing that. That's really good. And then they do it, and then so they get benefit from it. And that would be brilliant. So this was all, well, obviously, because it's an international one, it was over the interwebs. So it's slightly different as well. It's just got a different feel, James.
Yes, this is the first one, because obviously we've done a few sort of over Skype or whatever now, but this is the first one where we haven't been in the room. But a lot of them won't be. Yeah. And also the first female. So
yeah. So just a bit of background on Sari. She set up her own company when she was 18, 19. AB, Audio Blood. And she was very successful. From Toronto, moved to New York. And then, as she mentions herself...
as she pretty much describes the things that you're about to describe.
Yeah, I just think it's a brilliant story. I mean, like, just having the get up and go to do it.
She is a go-getter. No two ways round it.
That is exactly what she is.
And absolutely fair play to her.
Oh, totally. I think there's like two parts to this. The actual content we get from Sari is great, but also the actual... like, she did it.
Just general energy, and I got the impression that she's not the sort of person who just sits around waiting for someone to do something for her. She'll just go out and do it herself. She wouldn't, if she was in a band, she wouldn't wait to be discovered. She'd be out there constantly banging doors down, making inroads.
Enjoy, and we will speak to you very shortly when we'll go through some of the key points.
You said key points again.
Oh.
Okay.
Excellent, yeah. So, I think the first thing we've got is, so what's your current role in the music industry? How do you fit into this big machine, I guess?
So, after owning a marketing PR agency for the past 8 years called ABCO, I closed that company down at the end of last year, and then this year I started a new job at Concord Music Group in Beverly Hills, LA. So I made the move. I was in New York before and Toronto before that. So just in January I started this role in the communications and PR department. So in that role, We handle PR strategy and plans for a number of our releases, contacting media, managing a lot of media relationships, strategizing when to call people to get our artists on TV, different print magazine features across the U.S. We also manage the budgets and kind of setting up the campaigns. So we're talking a lot about the artist brand and image, hiring the right photographer, the right bio writer, all of those pieces.
Cool. So this is probably a very loaded question, but what do you think makes good PR, especially for a band who are either starting out or have been together for a little while, have maybe had a few shows, or maybe recorded themselves a couple of times and got a demo? How do you think that differs from maybe an established artist? If you could give some key differences for our audience who are maybe just starting out.
Yeah, I think that at every level, your strategy is different, but at the end of the day, it's also very much the same in a way. And what I mean by that is, so at all times, you always need to be hyper aware of your image and your story. And as you grow as an artist, your story evolves, right? And it's going to grow with you, and it doesn't have to be the same. And that's why artists can create different music and form into different sounds, because that's only natural. But when you're starting, and I think it's really important to find some differentiators, and it's kind of your unique selling points, and to have a unique story, because there's so many artists with the story of we were just best friends and we were jamming one day and then hey, let's start a band, and then we went on the road and
sounds familiar.
Yeah, that story works.
Yeah.
If you have amazing songs and the songs are blowing up the charts and nobody cares about your story because the songs are so epic and they've connected immediately. But that is very hard to do, and it only happens once in a while. And even if your songs are great, you still need a great story to propel them into the right hands. So I suggest coming up with a unique story, and sometimes you got to really drill in to figure out what that is. What is the kind of what is the unique angle you can take on your story? If that is different than every band, and whether that comes from maybe the lead singer, maybe the lead songwriter's personal background, or maybe it has something to do about a trip, or sometimes you need to just exaggerate. Never making it up, but kind of. And also that helps working with people who work in PR or having an outside opinion to say, hey, this is what we're thinking. Is that interesting at all? And they can say, well, the one thing that you mentioned that's interesting was that your house burned down and you lost all your songs, so you have to rewrite them. And so there's certain things that you might brush past, and someone else from the outside might say, that's the cool part. Talk more about that, So that's a big piece of the puzzle. And then once you're an established artist, it's the same problem. You've got to keep evolving your story because people get bored. And it's we know these guys. We know their story. And so with every record, how is that story evolving? How do you present a new side or a new angle so the media wants to keep talking to you, and there's excitement aside from writing continually great music, which is, of course, crucial. But when you're a bigger artist, it's more about, sometimes there's more power in saying no, and you see that with a lot of big artists, of holding back from media or only doing one big, feature rather than a bunch of little ones.
Yeah.
When you're building, you need to kind of take all the opportunities you can get. But once you're larger, it's more about being strategic and your publicist placing the right angle that you want to be seen in the press.
No, that's really useful. I like your point about getting sort of outside opinion to try and help you find out what your unique angle or your unique story might be. I think that's a really good point.
I think it's something as well people forget a little bit about as well, as in how unique people actually can be without even knowing it. Where you work at the moment, I know it might differ from ourselves in the UK, but I guess the underlying theory is the same. What do you look for when artists come to you, whether they're established or not? I know it'll probably differ from agency to agency and person to person, but what sort of thing just jumps out at you and goes, oh, that's cool, or like maybe where they're from, or
that's someone we want to work with.
Yeah, that's someone we want to work with. Yeah, yeah, like.
Well, it's a bit of a different. So before, when I was running the agency, you know, we would get approached by labels or artists or managers, hey, do you want to work on this project? Or vice versa, we would go hunt down artists that we wanted to work with. Now that I'm at a label, so Concord Music Group is a kind of mothership, and we own a number of independent labels like Fantasy, Stax, and Razor and Tie, Loma Vista, Fearless Records, so Rounder. So we own a bunch of indie labels. So the A&R team is more so scouting, and then, you know, they kind of they'll run stuff by us and be like, hey, what do you think about this? And they get everyone's opinions, but I'm not at the forefront anymore of kind of choosing the project.
Okay.
But in terms of what makes for a strong campaign, whether I'm an agency or I'm a publicist sitting in front of a new band that the label said, hey, we're going to sign this band. I think there needs to be obviously really good songs and really good live performance. That goes without saying. And then I like to see that there's been like a little bit of organic media traction. Like, hey, we've already been gigging and the local blogs are already on top of us. Because it's the media's job to pay attention when someone's really good and really standing out and really special. So I always like to see, like, hey, has there already been some traction that we didn't have to go and grind for? Was, you know, did a writer come out to the show just because it was hot and buzzing and they wanted to be there first, you know?
Yeah.
But do they have their shit together, I think, in a basic way in terms of being able to make interviews on time and manage their schedule and communicate clearly about approvals and quickly for photos and different materials and stuff like that is really important for a successful campaign.
Yeah, I was just about that. Go on, sorry.
Yeah. I would say, and yeah, just their willingness to take feedback too, because when an artist is newer, they aren't yet supposed to be, and how would they be experts at going onto a TV show and doing an interview or a radio interview? And every kind of interview is very different and has new challenges to present. So being able to crush that kind of interview immediately is hard. So what we see a lot of the time is new artists will get a lot of like blogger interviews and podcasts, so smaller outlets. But those in for the bigger TV shows or for the bigger radios, they're listening to those to see, are these guys ready? You know, are they going to be able to carry an exciting conversation if I put them on with our big host, you know?
Yeah, I do, yeah.
So an artist does need to be willing to get some feedback and do, you know, and if necessary, do some media training and just figure out how to shape their stories in a way that's compelling. And it's not to change anything about them, but some artists have it naturally where, you know, there's someone in the band who's like a talker, and sometimes it just needs to be a little bit of feedback given, but sometimes it just needs a little bit more work, and that's totally fine. I mean, for anyone, even like with the CEO of the company that we work with and stuff, we give feedback. And for, you know, I always suggest going to public speaking training and media training. I think it's so valuable. Yeah,
one of the things you just mentioned there, which spotted a question in my head, like what, you know, the sort of pitfalls or like things that bands do, like maybe stubbornness or not willing to take feedback. They know their songs are great or they know their persona is great. What sort of things do you always see popping up which people just always fall down at?
I think that there's a lot of people in this business who would sit here and be like, oh, bands, they do this, they drive me crazy, blah, blah, blah. I'm not that type of person, and I've decided that if I'm going to work in this industry for many years, I don't want to. I believe that when you're an artist and you're a great artist, there can be a little bit of a vibe like, well, I got myself here, I got this record dealer, or I got, you know, I've made these decisions so far, so look at, you know, so I need to trust my gut, and it's hard to trust others to pave that vision for you. And I do believe the artist needs to lead the vision, and a good team, like a publicist and a good manager and a good radio team and all the people who come in around them need to take that vision and go forth with it and help them refine it and say, okay, what's best for your vision is if you present yourself this way, or when we go on this TV show next week, let's think about bringing up these things or playing this certain song, and this is going to help you achieve this goal. And I think it's a partnership and it's a collaboration. I think that so many times industry people are like, oh, well, artists, they're driving me nuts. It's like, how would they know?
Yeah.
How would they know how to properly run, how to properly engage in a marketing meeting with a record label if no one's ever taught them, and how to properly turn things around if they haven't been sitting at a desk for 8 years like we have,
Mm-hmm.
They're on the road, they're all over the place. So it's more about I think it's more about working with them to be collaborative and to earn trust so that you can say, hey, I've got an idea, or here's some feedback on that interview, and they want to take it because you've got a good foundation to build on.
Yeah.
But in terms of, to answer your question more head on, the biggest thing that turns, I think, industry people off is not having a vision. Not having a vision at all, where it's like, yeah, I just kind of I'm really stoked to be here, and it's like, okay, that's not interesting to anyone, and it's not interesting to the media, and it's not interesting to the fans. So there needs to be a story, and there needs to be a vision for, okay, in 5 years I want to be here, and this type of artist I want to be, and this is what I want to stand for, and these are the types of causes and messages I want to bring forward. And then another one would be if an artist has a out of whack or off base, it's a little bit too sort of big crazy dreams. I think that having something to reach towards that's a little bit out of reach is really good for anyone in their career, in their artist career. But when it's a little bit way off center, totally unrealistic, that turns people off too, because it doesn't motivate,
Yeah, I know what you mean. That's something we've written down here, actually. James, was it Limelight, the podcast we listened to?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Yeah, and with yourself. And you mentioned something about stages, so I'm guessing if the vision is a 5-year plan or a 10-year plan or a 3-album plan, depending on how you measure time, I guess. You mentioned stages. What do you think are the key stages of an artist, a band, or someone like yourself who works maybe not on the stage, but at least puts bands up there or artists up there? How did you define stages? That was something that we found interesting, but we just thought it'd be interesting to bring it up again on this podcast.
You mean stages in development?
Yeah, I think that was what.
Yeah. You were talking about how a band on its journey will go through different sort of stages of their development, from first creation through to being a big established band. And I'm sort of interested in because I think one of the points you were making was around here's how a band at a certain stage, you'll need to find out where they're at in order for you as a publicist to give them the best level of support. So we're just interested in terms of what sort of stages you typically you engage with bands. Sort of what does that look like, and what's really the point in an artist's journey, I suppose, that it's worth engaging with a publicist as well. Because when we were in a band, all of the things you've been talking about, having a vision, have this goal, we were writing songs and wanted to play live. A lot of this stuff was just way off our radar. So interested in in those various stages and when you tend to interact with bands.
Yeah, it's hard to say. I think it's very tough to say. I don't think that there is a one-size answer for everyone.
No.
I think that people use, artists use PR in different ways at different levels of their career. So having a PR friend weigh in at an early stage in terms of helping you build an image and a brand online and a story might be valuable. But you don't need a publicist on retainer if you're not touring and there's no new music and there's no, momentum going. So I would say for an artist to start building relationships with media outlets from the beginning, and that's always important. And email bloggers, email local TV, invite them to the show. And when it becomes too much that you can't handle, and there's so many media requests, and things are really ramping up, or you have a manager or a label that is okay, we want to craft a big campaign around this upcoming big thing, big tour, big album release, then it makes sense to hire someone. But it's very expensive, and so it's not a crucial member of the team, because in the interim, you or manager can help to fill some gaps and maybe just do calls with publicists or listen to podcasts like what you guys are doing and try to just, collect all the information you can and find someone who will give you some advisement. But it doesn't necessarily make sense to bring it on. So I would say once there's strong music and you're kind of leading into a big release or a big tour that you really want to capitalize on, and you know that you yourself don't have the media relationships to do so, the media coming to you and you just don't have the time to manage it all or to know when to say yes and when to say no.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, that makes perfect sense, actually. I can see this happening, James, and when the more people we speak to, like Sari, it's going to be like, oh, I wish we did this.
No, absolutely. I remember the days when we'd sit in front of MySpace and showing our age. But we were genuinely clueless. We'd sort of interact with fans, but we had no strategy. We were just adding friends, and it was good. You'd have a community, but it would sort of be like, all right, we've got 2 people in Italy who really love our stuff. It's like, well, that's great, but there was no end game. There was no plan to it.
There was no flights booked to Genoa or anything like that, was there?
No. It's harder to be an artist than it ever was. All of the classics, you really have to service team in the beginning and learn all of the different marketing. Social, streaming, everything.
Yeah. So social media itself, obviously we know that plays a massive part. That's how we found yourself and stuff like that. So how do you think the best way to use social media? Is it just constant, or like obviously don't do it when you're drunk or stuff like that?
Some key do's and don'ts.
Don'ts,
from a social media perspective.
I would say it all has to do with, again, your voice and your brand. So if you're like a punk band and you're like an Irish punk band and you love like drinking and having fun, then do it like.
That's a good point.
Speaking specifically to what I used to work with this amazing Tex-Mex restaurant in Toronto. It's like a punk venue open till 4 a.m. Amazing food. And their social voice and what we've built their social following around was just being like really silly shit, swearing and like all of that. Whereas you have another artist that's maybe a sleek pop artist, more refined, and maybe that voice is completely different. So I think that's about drilling down what your key core values are and what your voice is. And how, and that doesn't just mean, we only talk about one thing, and we only talk about ourselves. I think that it should be maybe 80% about other things, 20% about yourself and your releases and your upcoming tour dates and stuff like that. And then the other 20% should be about causes that you like, being in the industry and then in the, other artists, engaging with your fans. So it is constant. I think more is always better, but having a strategy in terms of if you're a pop artist and your fans are younger, then maybe Snapchat is where you should spend 80% of your time.
Yeah.
If you're a kind of older rock artist, maybe Facebook is where you should spend your time. So it's also not spreading yourself thin and having a plan at each platform. It's a lot of work, but but artists really do love to hear fans really love to hear from the artist. So it feels great when you kind of connect the dots.
I totally understand what you're saying. Yeah.
So I'm conscious of time, and we'll need to wrap it up shortly. But we wanted to just touch on the Woman in Music, which we've seen on your site, which looks like it's something that you're involved in. So I just wondered if you want to give us a quick description of what that is and the sort of role that you've played in it.
Awesome. Yeah, Women in Music is a 32-year-old nonprofit. So it's been around before I was even born, actually. And it was founded in New York. And we have about close to 2,500 members globally, and a handful of chapters across the U.S. Obviously, New York being the biggest, L.A., Chicago, Boston, Nashville. We have a partner organization in Canada, and we're expanding into Europe more. Recently, we have the chapter in Brazil, Barbados, so growth, and that's just happened over the last 2-3 years. I sit on the board of directors on the communications committee, and then I'm also just starting in January. I took on leading the LA chapter, so that's been really exciting for me because I'm in a new city and I'm just meeting so many great women. And I built this committee with some really amazing people. It's all volunteer-run organization, and it's pretty amazing what we're able to do. We have a lot of different workshops, seminars, networking events. We have an online forum where we post job listings and people connect and kind of can ask for advice on different things that they're up against. A lot of our members are artists, singer-songwriters, or just songwriters, producers, and then we have a lot of kind of rising executives in the industry, whether it be publishing, recorded, side, live, so really across the board. And we're really committed to empowering women, providing them with tools, resources, community, and networking opportunities, and kind of connecting them with mentors in a non-intimidating way, and people that they can really grow and glean advice from. And I personally have, gotten jobs and clients and new mentors through Women in Music, so that's why I'm so committed to the organization and growing it. And it's been really exciting to be a part of it. Probably I've been involved for about 4 years now. So that's the kind of overview of it. But we can. Our website is womeninmusic.org. And on there you can see all the different chapters and the events, the blog, and all the details.
Cool.
Brilliant. Well, we'll put a link to that in the show notes for sure.
Thank you.
So awesome. If for anyone who wants to get involved, is that website the place to go?
Yeah, the website's the place to go. The annual membership is only $50, and it's important to us to keep it really cost effective. It's $30 for students who are studying music or industry. And yeah, that's where all the details are.
That's cool. Yeah, that's really good.
And if people are in LA, it's womeninmusicla.com.
Right. Okay. Slightly different.
Fantastic.
But they can go to the main website and get links.
Oh, cool. Well, we've only got a couple of minutes left, so thank you so much for joining us today. I hope the rest of your day is as productive as your morning. And I hope that we can speak again sometime.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for reaching out and for the work that you're doing in general. I think it's really exciting, and once it's posted, send it to me and we'll promote it through all of our channels.
Okay, so James, how did you feel about that Californian sun we just had?
That was brilliant. We should have gone over and done that in person, really,
totally,
shouldn't we?
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure our budget would stretch.
There's a budget?
Damn. What? I've let that out the park. Yeah, you currently owe me lots of money.
What, for you going to California?
Yeah, for the jet that I've arranged for the next episode.
Brilliant.
Well, that was a great episode. Biased, undoubtedly, but
obviously
there's a lot of great stuff. So, even something that's, I think, useful to us on this podcast, and something we need to start doing more of right off the bat, social media posts.
Social media posts?
Well, when you get good at it, then I'll stop banging on about it.
You are right, yeah.
But the 80-20 split, if most of your posts are buy our song, come to our gig, buy our song, come to our gig, it's going to get very repetitive and boring very quickly.
It is.
Like, download our podcast. There needs to be more about...
There'll be people at work going, you just filled up my stream with this, that and the other. This is the reason for that.
So there's definitely something about building up a rapport with your fans, your audience.
And
getting them to know you a bit, as opposed to just the music that you...
Yeah, because, like, we spoke about getting your story, and that's kind of a good place to set your story out of how you're in a band, and then why you're in a band, and also what you do in that band life, if you will. And I think that works well for the type of band that we were in, and the type of bands that may listen to this podcast. Like, if you think about someone like a pop star like Madonna or Britney Spears, like, you can't imagine them going to the shops to buy their food, can you really? But, like, the split is important, because if you get it wrong, it does sound like you just sell.
The other side of it, though, is I would have at the time thought, well, who really cares about, or whatever. For example, if you, a lot of people, you'd go onto whatever social media, you put Facebook on, and you'll have a feed of, here's what I had for tea, sort of posts.
Yes.
And for a lot of people, they're like, well, I don't really care. And so I think for me, when we were in a band, and it was before social media became the thing that it was, but I would feel a bit like, well, who really cares about this part of my personal life? And equally, do I really want to share that? But I can totally see the value of, if people get to know a bit more about you, and they've followed you for however many weeks, months, potentially years, and then you write a song about something, and it sort of references sort of things that have happened in your life, then there's that connection that people will sort of relate more to the song. I get that as a thing.
Yeah, I mean, one of the big things we spoke about on the back of that was like getting your story. What makes you you? What makes the band tick? Or how did they come about? Or where do they sit, really? The social media element of it is very useful, because I suppose the tea thing, and like, everyone puts pictures down of their food, but if you think about it, yes, you've got an element of come to our gig, but how did you, the band, get to your gig? What did you do on the way? Because I know when we toured around, we saw funny stuff happening, and we got into funny scrapes and stuff like that, and people doing stuff at our gigs we just didn't expect, and the culture of even going
that's the thing, that there is interesting stuff that happens in your day-to-day life.
And it's kind of a little bit of a cheat as well, because if you're saying, oh, at this gig, this happened, which reminds people that your gig, and reminds them to go to the live bit, and it reminds them of, like, and I think, like, I know we mentioned another episode about one coming up in the future when we interviewed Mark Morris, and there was a couple of fans that obviously go to see him a lot, and they have that kind of connection, that story with him, and the stories he tells on stage kind of like engage the crowd, and that's a similar thing. And it's just like, yeah, I'm here to play music, that's what I'm doing, that's what you've paid for, but here's a bit about me. And it also kind of takes away that boundary of artist and fan, and I think that's a really important point. And I bet you it's something as you've mentioned, that we need to do more of it, to get good at it as well. And I think the only way you get good at it is by doing it more and getting that balance. If you do too much, does it turn people off? If you do enough, you don't get as many downloads in our case, which I get reminded of. But my point is, like, don't expect it to happen straight away. You've got to try and figure your way out. It's as people say, an art and a science.
Indeed.
So, but just totally right what Sari was saying.
So, well, let's us try and get our split somewhat improved. Like, for example, every time I beat you at parkrun, perhaps I'll tweet about it.
Right, that's fine. But I also think the split also needs to be like, we need to just...
But it needs to be useful to people as well, because there's an
does.
element of finding about a bit more about us who are doing the podcast, or the band, the artist. But then there's also an element of, well, actually, I'm here for the music.
And like, we obviously have our show notes, so we can obviously tweet stuff about the show. And likewise for bands, they could tweet things of like inspiration that they've had, maybe, of like, I've just heard the new insert artist song, I really like it. And that kind of gives them a bit more of a story about who they are, who their influences are. And I know Paul, who was our first guest, he is a big reader, so he really tweets loads of stuff about what he's reading, and like a lot of cultural stuff, and that makes you think, oh yeah, I can know him a bit more because he reads similar books to I do, or I've never read those books. Why don't I look into them? So it's an interesting point, and something I think...
that's building your brand and your image as well, which is sort of part of the next, or one of the things that we spoke about, and it helps with, Sari was going on about the story, what makes you different to the other many thousands of people out there making music.
I wrote down what makes you you and you unique.
Yeah, and that's a hard thing. When she gave the example of, we're some mates, we've known each other for ages, we got together and we started and played some music. It's tied and tested but tired sort of story, I guess. But there'll be lots of things that were different about us. But it's a bit, I don't know, I think it's hard to just sit down and think, right, why are we different? Why would anyone want to?
But it could be something simple, like the type of gigs you played. You might have played a lot of like clubs, like working men clubs at the start. You might have played a lot of, whether you're college or sixth form or uni, like parties. Like you could be like a party band. That's a little bit different. And I think it's just finding those little bits.
Yeah, well, I guess it could be anything. Yeah, but one of the things we probably didn't do is really thinking about what our story is and what it is we're trying to project out to the world, and giving it some thought.
Yeah, and I think one of the key things I should also mention was don't make it up, because you can exaggerate parts, but don't make it up because you will get found out.
Yeah, but in this day and age, you'll very easily get found out if you just make.
And there's a whole load of bands who it's a case of just being true to yourself, because that's who you are, and people will like you because of it. Yeah. Someone definitely will. There's enough people who are out there, there's enough bands who are very similar to other bands. There's an audience out there for everyone, really, as long as you're good enough. In some cases, if you're not good enough.
But I think one of the takeaways was if your backstory's boring, or there isn't a one, then your music's going to have to be absolutely phenomenal. You're going to have to be one of the best bands ever. Now, you might be one of the best bands ever, but if you're just a very good band or artist or whatever, then you need to have a story to tell her.
Yeah. But I reckon if you just had a very straightforward getting to the band, the mystique might be to not have a story. Because it's quite... what I'm trying to say is, don't worry if you don't have a story. Just don't stop playing because you can generate a story with the way that you do things. So
I thought you were saying your angle be to have nothing about you ever.
Oh no! Just like
which you could
don't
try
worry
that.
if you haven't. What I'm trying to say is, don't worry you don't have a story, because if you think it's boring or whatever, don't worry. The story will come. Just try and work out what is there.
So the next thing I was going to talk about was the organic media growth point that she made, because it was really good to hear from someone who's done a job in that part of the industry to say, right, well, one of the things that I'd look out for is, has there been exactly that, some organic media growth? Has the local music publication or the local newspaper or have
blogs or whatever,
or any of the sort of local online music media been talking about this band is something that should look out for, which makes perfect sense.
Yeah, because I actually wrote a similar time was speak to people, and that's how you get that organic.
Well, it's one of those, if you want a publicity deal of some kind, then it makes perfect sense to be able to go and almost with your resume, it's like having a CV, I guess. Here's the various things, here's what people are saying about us, it's not just us saying that, or me as an artist saying that I'm absolutely brilliant. Here's these other people who also think, I'm doing some really great stuff.
And that, from our experience, that did actually help, because we had a little run where we're in the local Newcastle paper, the Chronicle. We had another thing in, I want to say, the Metro. And we did pop up in NME. I mean, it was only by accident. We were there was a gig on in Newcastle. We were in the listings, and it had REM, then our band.
Sandwiched between REM and...
It was someone else of massive merit.
Yeah.
But my point is, like, we had a little run of it, and then that formed part of our story, as we just mentioned. And I was saying, like, if you didn't have a story to start with, then that kind of generates your story. And that was when I started, well, we both started speaking to other people in other cities about getting gigs there.
Yeah, it gives some credibility as well, doesn't it? I think if you just try and get yourself in Rolling Stone or NME from the outset, that's potentially going to be a tricky initial target to hit. But if you start with much smaller publications, or, like, say, blogs or whatever, and then sort of build up, each bit will give you a bit of credibility to go to the next one that's a little bit bigger to go to the next one. And then eventually, when you are, shooting for the real big sort of media publications, then you've got this body of stuff sitting behind you. And then if you wanted to take that further and go down the publicity sort of route,
I think it's also you're right. At in the same time, no harm in throwing one towards NME. Why not? Or whoever. But yeah, that whole building your resume or building your portfolio, like, it's not just me. I mean, Mum's saying this. It's actually people who have come and seen us are saying this who we don't know. And that, don't get us wrong, I found that tricky. It's quite a hard thing to do, and that it just is. It's not like there's a quick way around it. It just is. I mean, you have to try and convince people that you are the next band they should listen to. And
I'm still waiting for you to get our podcast reviewed. It's a slow process.
Okay. But then that whole publicist part of it, of getting someone to help you with this, one of the main things that Sari said was it does cost. So that is an outgoing. And how much you can do yourself.
Yeah. There'll be a point in time when it becomes something that you would think about doing. If you've just suddenly picked up a guitar for the first time, or sat down at the piano and created your first song.
It's a couple of rungs to go yet.
Yeah. This isn't going to be for you instantly.
No. Yeah. It's a lot of this is one of the parts where I think, oh, it sounds a bit like medicine, but it is work. You have to do it. If you want it to work, give it some time, give it some effort, and the more you put in, the more you get out. I mean, this
that'll
does
crop up almost every episode.
Yeah,
I should imagine.
Yeah, I mean, I know this bit sounds a bit like as they say, an after-school special, but it's true.
Who says that?
I think it's I'm going with the American feel, because I think it's an American term.
Right. Well, they are currently second in terms of countries downloading.
Exactly.
Still closely followed by India. We need India to step up their game. Because they're currently in bronze medal position.
Yeah, but one of the things we did say was, once you've got your organic media growth and you've put that time in, the media will find you as well, which she said.
Oh yeah,
and it's keeping that traction.
You need to be out there for certain bits of the media to come across you in the first place.
It's going back to that whole thing we spoke about with Ross, of that being allowed to fail. Sending 20 emails to 20 people and getting no responses. It's not a failure, but some people might say it's a failure. It's just
if you're speaking to a journalist, or anyone, come to our gig, please come and review our set, or here's our song. Can you review it? Can you put it? If you only do that to 5 people, then chances of you getting anyone. If you send that out to 1,000. Then you're just playing the law of averages. Then you're just totally increasing your chances.
And it comes with the funniest times, because when we had the little piece, well, actually it was probably a big piece in the Chronicle, we were sending to a fair few people, and we just picked this bloke from the Chronicle and sent an email, and before we know it, we're getting a phone call from our mate saying, "Oh, like the piece in the Chronicle." We're like, "Oh yeah, that little bit." But no, it's quite a big piece, and
it's making it easy for people as well. Make it easy for them to find out about you. Make it easy to get the content, the story. Find out, if a journalist or anyone who's writing about you has to spend ages to find out the backstory, who you are, what Whereas if it's just, whether it's on a website, whether it's on if it's just there, it makes it so much easier, and it's so much more likely that someone's going to be...
Yeah, I mean...
will write something about you if there's a lot of stuff that's easily accessible about you, rather than them having to go and hunt and find it.
Exactly, and what can they steal? What can they go, oh, that's a nice bit of their story, that'll take up, I don't know, 70 words in my article. Boom, there it goes. And you never know what's going to appear, because I remember when we were reading an article going, and they're quite popular in Slovenia. I was like, what are they on about? But they were in one of our blogs somewhere.
There was photos of us when we were
and we gave some CDs to a bar who played our music, and I think we just kind of went, we're big in Slovenia, but someone took it and put it in there, and people commented about it. We're like, we're not lying, but it's kind of just an embellishment. But yeah, like...
So following on, there was another bit about being willing to take feedback on things. So if you are getting to the point where you might be doing an interview, it was a great point that a lot of people who are musicians, the first time they come to do actual media, that could not be their skill set. There's a fair chance that they could be an awesome singer, a fantastic drummer, or whatever it might be, but they might not be particularly great at doing interviews, for example. So, you might suddenly be in a position where you're getting all these plaudits, everyone's singing your praises about how great your music is, but be mindful of the fact that if someone goes, that interview you did was awful, you need to think about this, this and this the next time you do it. Be willing to listen.
Yeah, of course, yeah, that's a really good
point. And there's nothing wrong with being rubbish at it to start with.
Yeah, and I understand that if you're in a band and you're getting all this plaudits of like, you're great at that and the other, it might be quite hard to hear like, no, I am the singer in this band and we are doing really well. I don't need to listen to you. No, you do. Because if someone's telling you about it, then it probably is happening.
Well, it comes back to if people that you trust or people who've been around for and have a lot of experience at these things are giving you useful, like constructive criticism, then it's probably something to give a bit of thought to. So
yeah, totally. Have you got any more bits and bobs there?
I think we're to now finish off with the good cause for this. So
this is something that Saris is on the board for, isn't she?
You could tell there was a whole host. I mean, she was passionate about most things, but she was definitely passionate when she was talking about women in music
organisation. Yeah. So since we spoke, I watched a couple of the videos and read a few of the articles, and they're really well put together. It's a really good cause, and it's not so where Sari is involved. It's in Los Angeles. And it's not just LA or in America. It's across the world as well, which is great.
Well, it's great because it's been a male-dominated industry for ever.
Yeah, and without getting too political, and obviously with the stuff going on at the minute, like, it's really important because there's a lot of creative women out there, a lot of great, I don't mean in the sense of the voice, I mean like women's voices out there who have got something to say, saying in different ways. And if this gives more people more opportunities,
far richer in general for the music industry to have a far better balance. So we'll put links in the show notes for those who would like to get involved. And as you've said, Ben, there's a number of different ways to get involved, and I think there's lots to be gained.
Even down to mentoring and stuff like that.
Yeah, so whether it's going to one of the sort of meetups,
seminars and stuff like that,
that has, or like you say, whether it's mentorship or a whole host of things. I mean, there's loads of information on the website, so definitely something, a great cause, and something for people to have a look at.
Excellent.
So to line up next week's episode, our guest is Roddy Womble of Idlewild. Here we'll discuss support slots, middlemen, and having a creative space.
We've reached the end of this week's episode of Anyone Can Play Guitar podcast.
Big thank you for tuning in, and remember to stop by iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts from and subscribe so that you never miss an episode.
While you're there, it would be amazing if you could leave a rating and a review.
All the show notes can be found at www.acpgmusic.com, And if you want to get in touch,
email us your questions, any feedback and any suggestions to info@acpgmusic.com.
That's it for now. Keep supporting upcoming artists.
And we'll catch you next time.